The wind carried the dust of late summer across the open plain, curling it around the lone rider approaching Ash Hollow. Folks who saw her coming would have recognized the straight-backed posture, the steady hands, and the calm, unreadable expression. Joanna Blake had returned, nurse, caretaker, and the one woman in 3 counties no man had ever managed to court. She guided her bay mare down the narrow road, passing the weathered sign that welcomed travelers into town. Ash Hollow looked the same as when she'd left it years ago, a cluster of wood-built shops, a lonely church steeple, and a scattering of ranch wagons along the road. But the quiet felt heavier now, as if trouble had settled before she arrived. Joanna didn't stop in town. Her uncle's homestead lay a mile past the river, and she'd ridden hard for 2 days to get here after receiving the urgent telegram. Uncle Gideon. Injury. Come at once. No details. No explanation. Just enough to keep her awake every night until she reached him. When the homestead finally came into view, small, weather-beaten, but still standing strong, Joanna urged her horse forward. A ranch hand spotted her first and hurried toward the porch. "Miss Blake. You got here quick," he said, pulling off his hat. "Where is he?" Joanna dismounted before the horse even stopped. "In the back room. Doctor stitched him up but said you'd know what to do better than any of us." Joanna stepped inside without another word. The smell of boiled water and iodine filled the small home. Her uncle lay on a cot, his leg bound and elevated. Sweat clung to his brow, but he managed a faint smile. "Jojo, you came." "Of course I did." She knelt beside him, checking the bandages with quick, practiced fingers. "What happened?" Before he could answer, a shadow darkened the doorway behind her. Heavy boots thudded on the wooden floor. Joanna turned, and froze. Rhett Callahan. Tall, broad-shouldered, sun-browned, with that careless grin he wore as easily as his hat. The same man people whispered about in saloons and Sunday pews alike. The same man her uncle had mentioned once, always with mild annoyance and reluctant admiration mixed. But Joanna's expression held neither. Only controlled, frosty disapproval. "Rhett Callahan," she said flatly. "I should have known trouble had your name on it." Rhett lifted both hands, palms out, a teasing glint in his eyes. "I deserved that. Maybe not the way you said it, but certainly the part about trouble." Uncle Gideon gave a raspy chuckle. "Jojo, now don't go being too hard on the man. He didn't mean the horse to spook." Joanna shot Rhett a look colder than the northern wind. "You caused the accident." "Indirectly," Rhett admitted. "Your uncle's horse stepped in a hole on my property. I was riding nearby and tried to steady the animal before it threw him, but I wasn't quick enough." Joanna stood slowly, her stare unwavering. "And now you're, what? Here to apologize?" Rhett shrugged. "That, and to help. At least I can do something since it happened on my land." "We don't need your help," Joanna replied. She sounded calm, but the edge in her voice could cut rope. Her uncle groaned softly. Joanna immediately turned back to him, the rest of the room fading away. She cooled a cloth, pressed it to his forehead, and adjusted the splints. Her hands were steady. Her heartbeat wasn't. Rhett didn't leave. He lingered by the wall, silent now, as if letting her see he wasn't easily intimidated. Outside, a ranch hand tended her horse. The whole place hummed with unease, though no one spoke of it. Joanna felt it, the tension in the land itself, as if the soil had a warning to give. Her uncle finally drifted into a shallow sleep. Joanna stepped outside, inhaling the dry heat, grounding herself. The door creaked again. Rhett followed. "I'm staying on to help Gideon," he said, leaning against a post. "I owe him that much." "You owe us nothing," Joanna replied sharply. Rhett's smile deepened, soft but unyielding. "You can be mad at me all you want, Joanna Blake. Still doesn't change what needs doing, . Her jaw tightened. She mounted the porch steps until she stood nearly level with him. "I came here to heal my uncle," she said. "Not to babysit you." Red only tipped his hat, utterly unbothered. "We'll see about that." Joanna spent the next morning organizing her uncle's supplies, taking careful inventory of everything the doctor had left behind. The homestead was quiet except for the breeze rolling across the fields. She hoped it would stay that way. But quite rarely did it last long around Rhett Callahan. By the time the sun climbed over the ridge, she heard the scrape of boots outside. Rhett was already hauling fresh water from the well, his shirt sleeves rolled up, moving with the kind of effortless confidence that irritated her more than she cared to admit. "You're here early," Joanna said without looking up from her work. "Didn't sleep much," Rhett replied. "Figured I'd start where I'm needed." "You're not needed." She placed another bottle on the shelf. "I can manage." He paused only long enough to flash a grin. "Sure, you can. But I'm helping anyway." Their eyes met, hers, hard as stone, his, warm as sunrise. Neither looked away first. Before Joanna could form her next argument, one of the ranch hands stumbled onto the porch. "Miss Blake, Rhett, there's trouble near the south fence. Cat Lebaron's riders are out again, harassing the small ranchers." Rhett's expression shifted instantly, his smile vanishing. "How many?" "4, maybe 5. They roughed up old man Tully real bad." Joanna tightened her jaw. She knew the stories. The cattle baron, Harlan Boone, had been slowly pushing his weight around Ash Hollow. Buying land, threatening the ranchers who refused, breaking fences to let their cattle scatter. The law looked the other way. Always did when Boone's money was involved. Rhett grabbed his hat and mounted his horse. "Stay with Gideon," he told Joanna. "I wasn't planning on leaving," she answered, her tone clipped. But deep down, she felt a knot forming. She'd hoped to avoid town politics and territorial feuds. She came to heal her uncle and leave again. But Ash Hollow was pulling her in, dragging her toward something bigger than she wanted. A few hours later, Rhett returned, dust-covered and tense. Joanna met him at the porch, arms folded. "Well?" she asked. "They're getting bold," Rhett said. "Boone wants more land, and he's not afraid to use fear to get it. Today was a warning." Joanna lowered her gaze. "And you? You're refusing to sell to him." "I built my ranch with my own hands," Rhett answered quietly. "I'm not giving that man a single acre." Joanna almost respected him for it. Almost. But she still didn't trust him, not with her heart, not with her life, not with her uncle's safety. Rhett Callahan was charming, bold, unpredictable, exactly the kind of man she swore she'd never let close. Later that afternoon, Joanna walked into the small town clinic she'd set up near her uncle's barn. A couple of ranch wives brought in a boy with a sprained wrist. Joanna worked calmly, showing them how to bind it. But outside, raised voices caught her attention. 2 of Harlan Boone's riders leaned against their horses, spitting tobacco and glaring at the townsfolk. Their presence was a message. One stepped closer to the clinic window, pretending to inspect the frame. Joanna stepped outside, hands on her hips. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" One rider smirked. "Just check in the property, miss. Boone's thinking this clinic might be better used for storage." "This building isn't for sale," Joanna said firmly. "Everything's for sale," he drawled. Before she could reply, Rhett appeared from behind the barn, jaw clenched, eyes storm-dark. "You boys lost?" he asked. The riders straightened, but their smirks only widened. "Just passing along a message." "Then pass it along somewhere else," Rhett said, stepping closer. The men rode off with slow, mocking ease. Joanna watched them disappear down the trail, her pulse elevated. "You didn't have to interfere," she said quietly. "Yes, I did," Rhett replied. She hated that those words made her feel safer. Hated even more that he'd seen that flicker in her eyes. As she returned to her supplies, a rider delivered mail. A single envelope rested on top, bearing a seal she knew too well. Her fiancé's crest. The one she'd hoped never to see again. Her hands trembled, just slightly. Rhett noticed. "You all right?" he asked. Joanna shoved the envelope into her pocket. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. Not with the past clawing its way back. Not with danger growing near. Not with Rhett Callahan standing too close, and her heart betraying her in ways she didn't dare acknowledge. The air felt heavier that evening, as if the whole valley was holding its breath. Joanna remained in the clinic long after sundown, sweeping floors that didn't need sweeping, rearranging jars already in perfect rows. Anything to distract herself from the envelope burning a hole in her pocket. Rhett lingered outside, splitting wood by moonlight. She could hear each strike of the axe, sharp, steady, rhythmic. Too steady. A man working out his frustration, he wouldn't speak aloud. Joanna finally stepped out, clutching her shawl. "You don't have to do that tonight." He propped the axe against the stump. "Needed something to keep my hands busy." "Why? Trouble stirring you again?" she asked. Rhett glanced at her, really looked at her, then shook his head. "Not trouble. Just thinkin', dot." Joanna didn't ask what about. She already felt too close to knowing. The next morning, rumors drifted through town like wildfire. Folks whispered in the mercantile, muttered over fence lines, traded worried glances in the churchyard. "Did you hear? Rhett and that nurse are getting mighty close. She shuts every man out, 'cept him, apparently. Boone won't like it. He's already watching those two." Joanna rode into town for supplies and felt the stares even before she stepped off her horse. A pair of ranch wives offered polite smiles that carried more curiosity than friendliness. A few ranch hands nudged each other when Rhett appeared beside her at the general store. "I didn't ask you to follow me," she murmured under her breath. "I'm not followin'," he answered, selecting a coil of rope. "Just happened to be shoppin', dot." She shot him a glare. "You don't shop at 8 in the morning." "I do today." The storekeeper cleared his throat awkwardly. Joanna purchased what she needed, ignoring the buzzing whispers behind her. When she stepped outside, a telegraph boy rushed toward her with another message. Her breath caught. Another letter? So soon. But this one bore no crest. She unfolded it with guarded caution. "Miss Blake. Rhett Callahan needs to be convinced to sell. He respects you. Use that. A smart woman would. H.B. Harlan Boone." Her stomach twisted. She crumpled the telegram. Rhett stepped closer. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing," she lied, slipping the paper into her satchel. "Just town business." Rhett watched her too long for comfort, brow furrowed, suspicion simmering beneath concern. Joanna turned her horse sharply and rode off, creating distance before he could press further. Back at the homestead, her uncle had improved enough to sit on the porch. Joanna checked his bandages and encouraged him to rest, but Gideon had always been stubborn. "Jojo," he rasped, "folks say you're running around with that Callahan boy." She stiffened. "I'm doing no such thing." "Then why's he keep showing up around here?" "Because he feels guilty," she replied. "That's all." Her uncle gave a knowing half-smile. "Guilt, don't look at someone the way that man looks at you." She stood abruptly. "He is not my concern." But even she wasn't convinced anymore. Later that afternoon, Joanna carried a pail toward the barn when she heard a muffled thud. Then another. She paused. Inside, Rhett stood with his fists clenched, striking a wooden post, not with anger toward her, but toward something far worse. "What happened?" she asked. "Boone's men cut my northern fence again," he said breathlessly. Let out half my herd. Spent hours rounding them up. They're sending a message. Joanna set the pail down. He wants your land. He's not getting it. Their gazes locked, fierce and unspoken truths passing between them. Joanna swallowed hard. You should stay away from me, she said quietly. Boone thinks I influence you. I won't be used, not by him, not by anyone. Rhett stepped closer, his voice low. You think I'm using you? No, she admitted. But other people might try. Then let them try, he answered. Don't push me away on their account. She looked down, pulse racing. I can't get close. Not to you. Rhett's voice softened, warm as a summer dusk. You already are. Joanna turned sharply, retreating toward the clinic before he could see the turmoil she carried. But he had seen enough. And he wasn't going anywhere. The following days brought no peace. Every morning, Joanna woke before dawn, hoping the weight on her chest would ease, and every morning it seemed heavier. Rhett's presence around the homestead was steady but distant, close enough to protect, far enough to respect the walls she kept building. Yet every time she caught him glancing her way, something inside her pulled taut. That thin thread grew tighter the morning her clinic came under attack. Joanna had just finished checking her uncle's bandages when she heard a frantic knock at the back door. A ranch boy, maybe 12, stood there, breathless, pointing toward the clinic by the barn. Miss Blake. Men inside, tearing up the place. Joanna dropped her apron and sprinted across the yard. The door to her clinic hung crooked, half ripped from its hinges. Inside, two rough-looking men rummaged through cabinets and shelves, tossing medicines onto the floor. What do you think you're doing? Joanna demanded. One man turned, smirking. Looking for med kits. Don't worry, darlin'. We'll only take what's useful. You're stealing. She didn't finish the sentence. Behind her, footsteps thundered across the yard. Rhett burst through the doorway, rage radiating off him. You boys made the wrong choice today, he said coolly. The men exchanged glances, too slow. Rhett grabbed the closest one by the collar and slammed him against the wall. The second lunged with a broken crate plank, but Joanna knocked it aside with a jar from the counter. Rhett swung, sending the attacker stumbling out the door. Joanna backed up, heart racing, but she held her ground. The first man struck Rhett once, hard, but Rhett took the hit and delivered a punishing one in return. Within seconds, both intruders scrambled out of the clinic, cursing and limping toward their horses. Rhett didn't chase them. He stood breathing hard, shoulders heaving, eyes fixed on Joanna. You all right? He asked. Joanna swallowed. Yes. He took a step closer. Good. Because if they'd hurt you. Don't, she whispered. Don't say something you'll regret. Rhett let out a low breath. I'm not the one regretting anything. Silence stretched. The ruined clinic around them felt strangely small, as if the walls had shrunk to force the truth between them. Rhett, her voice faltered. He reached out, slowly, as if giving her every chance to pull away. His calloused fingers brushed her cheek, light as a whisper. I know you're scared, Joanna, he murmured. But I'm fallin' for you. Her heart jolted. She stepped back, shaking her head. No. You can't. You don't understand what that would cost me. What would it cost you? He asked gently. Everything, she said. I can't let you touch my heart. Rhett's expression softened into something she hadn't seen on any man before, patience. Warmth. Certainty. Too late, he said. The words hung between them, dangerous and tender all at once. Joanna spun away, forcing distance before her knees gave out. I won't be a burden to you. And I won't let you become one to me. You aren't a burden, he said quietly. You're the best thing that's walked into my life in a long time. She shook her head again, unable to let the feeling take root. The world already had its grip on her fate, her debts, her engagement, her past mistakes. I need space, she whispered. Rhett nodded once, pain tightening his jaw. Then I'll give it. For now. He left the clinic slowly, shoulders bowed just slightly, not defeated, but wounded. Joanna remained inside long after he left, breathing shakily, staring at the scattered supplies on the floor. Fear, longing, anger, everything swirled until she felt dizzy. But the worst part wasn't that she'd pushed him away. It was knowing the words she'd spoken weren't true. Because Rhett Callahan had touched her heart long before she realized it, and no amount of distance could undo that. Marin barely recognized the sound of her own breath, sharp, fast, terrified. Cold wind tore at her dress as the two men dragged her toward the narrow ravine. Snowflakes stung her cheeks like needles. One man, the one with the gray beard, kept muttering, "Should have never lived this long, girl. Should have kept your mouth shut." The other, lankier and younger, only grinned. "Boss wants her gone. Says the rancher's gettin' too fond of her." Riggs. Of course. Marin stumbled, boots slipping on the icy ground, her heart pounding so violently she felt it in her throat. Riggs didn't just want Jonah out of the way, he wanted her silence permanently sealed. She twisted hard, catching the younger man off balance, but he yanked her back with a curse. "You stop that," he growled, shoving her forward. Her knees hit the ground. Pain shot up her legs. Snow soaked through her skirt. "Please," she breathed, but the plea wasn't for them. It was a whisper to whatever higher power might still be watching. A distant crack split the air. One of the men jerked and collapsed face first into the snow. Marin froze. A second crack echoed. The gray-bearded man spun, reaching for his gun, but he dropped before his fingers even brushed the holster. Silence. Then a shadow stepped out from behind a ridge, boots crunching through the frost. Jonah. His vest was dusted with snow, his hat low, his rifle still smoking. His jaw was clenched so tight the muscle twitched. Marin. The word spilled out as a raw exhale. She almost sagged with relief. Jonah. I didn't know if you. I'm here. He crossed the distance in 3 long strides, hauling her up and pulling her into his chest. She felt the rapid hammer of his heartbeat through his coat. He drew in one shaky breath, then another, as if he was convincing himself she was real. "You're hurt?" he asked. "No," her voice trembled. "Just scared." His thumb brushed her cheek. "You could have died. You came," she whispered. His eyes burned with something deep and dangerous. "I'd cross 1,000 blizzards if you called." Before she could speak, footsteps sounded behind them. Jonah spun, pulling Marin behind him. Deputy Crowley appeared, rifle in hand, hat pulled low against the wind. "Both men are down?" he asked. "Dead," Jonah replied flatly. "Riggs sent them." Crowley's grim nod said he wasn't surprised. "Sheriff's moving in on Riggs now. Man's losing his grip, fightin' to keep it." Jonah squeezed Marin's hand. "She comes home with me. I'll keep her safe." Crowley didn't argue. "You do that." He moved off, leaving Jonah and Marin alone in the swirling snow. Jonah guided her back toward the ranch, not letting go of her hand for even a moment. When they reached the porch, the lantern Jonah had left burning cast a warm halo of light around them. Inside, Jonah shut the door and leaned his back against it as though physically holding the world out. Marin stood in the center of the room, trembling. He stepped toward her slowly, as if giving her a chance to pull away. She didn't. "Marin," his voice was rough. "You told me not to touch your heart. You were afraid. I still am." She swallowed. "But not of you." He reached up, brushing a strand of wind-tangled hair from her face. "Too late," he murmured, repeating the words he'd said that night. "I'm in it. And I'm not letting go." Her breath shuddered. "Then don't." Jonah cupped her face with both hands. For a moment, the world outside, the blizzard, Riggs, danger, faded to nothing. "You feel like home," he whispered. And Maren, who had never had one, stepped into him as if she'd known it all along. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, Jonah wrapped his arms around her, anchoring her, claiming her, vowing without words that no one would ever take her again. Not while he still drew breath. Morning light crawled over the hills slowly and unsure, like even the sun didn't want to disturb the hush settling over Jonah's ranch. The blizzard had passed, leaving the world clean and white, but inside the cabin, everything felt heavy, waiting, bracing. Maren sat at the table, fingers wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold, pulse still unsteady from the night before. Jonah moved quietly behind her, gathering cartridges, checking the rifle, and setting 2 more guns on the table. He wasn't speaking, but every movement said the same thing. Riggs wouldn't stop unless Jonah stopped him first. She swallowed hard. "You're going after him." Jonah didn't pretend otherwise. "Crowley and the sheriff aim to arrest him, but Riggs'll never be taken alive. A man like him only respects a bullet." Maren felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "He sent men to kill me. To kill you. He won't quit." Jonah finally lifted his gaze. His eyes, usually calm, steady, held a storm. "You almost died yesterday. I won't let him breathe free while you're looking over your shoulder." Maren stood, chair legs scraping softly. "Then I'm going with you." "No," the word cut through the quiet like a blade. She stepped closer. "Jonah." "No," he set both palms on the table, leaning forward. "You think I can fight straight with you beside me? You think I'll be looking at Riggs when I'll be worrying about you every second?" He shook his head once, hard. "I can't. Don't ask it." Her throat tightened. She hated how much sense it made. And she hated that it meant watching him ride toward danger alone. Jonah walked to her then, fingers brushing her jaw, soft in a way nothing else in the world was. "I'm coming back," he said. "You don't know that." "I do." His thumb stroked her cheekbone. "Because I finally got something worth coming back to." Her breath tangled in her chest. "Jonah." He kissed her, slow, sure, like sealing a promise. When he pulled away, he rested his forehead against hers. "Stay inside. Bolt the door. Don't open it unless it's me or Crowley. Understand?" She nodded. She didn't trust her voice to hold steady. He grabbed his hat, his coat, holstered his gun, and stepped outside. Maren rushed to the window, watching him mount his horse. Snow kicked up beneath hooves as he rode out, straight toward Riggs' land. Maren whispered, "Please come back," though she doubted he could hear. Jonah reached the ridge overlooking Riggs' ranch just as the sheriff's men began to move in. He dismounted, slid into the shadow of a cluster of rocks, and watched. Riggs' place was bristling with hired guns, desperate men, cornered men. Crowley crawled up beside him. "You sure about this, Jonah?" "No," Jonah said. "But I'm doing it anyway." Crowley gave a grim nod. "Sheriff has men flanking the south. We take the north." Gunfire cracked before the plan even settled. Riggs' men fired wildly from the porch. The sheriff's men took cover behind wagons. Jonah didn't wait. He moved downhill with lethal purpose, firing with precision, each shot deliberate. Every inch forward brought him closer to the man who'd threatened Maren's life. Crowley shouted, "Jonah, careful." But Jonah wasn't listening. All he saw was Riggs stepping out onto the porch, rifle in hand, grinning like the devil himself. "McCoy!" Riggs roared. "I hear you've been playing hero for that little stray." Jonah fired, grazing Riggs' shoulder, forcing him back. "You shouldn't be touched her," Jonah said, voice low enough only he could hear. The gunfight intensified. Bullets tore into boards, kicked up dirt, and shattered beams. Jonah pushed forward until he was close enough to see the rage on Riggs' face. Riggs sneered. "She ain't worth dying for." Jonah leveled his rifle. "She's worth more than your whole damn life." They fired at the same time. One shot hit wood. The other hit flesh. Riggs staggered back, eyes wide, shock twisting his features before he fell onto the porch, unmoving. Silence settled fast. Crowley jogged up, panting. "He's done." Jonah lowered his rifle. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the sudden crash of everything he'd been holding in. Crowley clapped his shoulder. "Go home, Jonah." Jonah didn't need telling twice. Back at the cabin, Marin sat by the window, hands clasped tight. Hours crawled by. Every crunch of wind against the house made her flinch. Then, hooves. She bolted to the door, unbolting it with trembling fingers. Jonah stepped in, battered, exhausted, alive. Marin's breath broke on a sob. "You came back." He pulled her into his arms, crushing her against him. "Told you I would." And for the first time since she'd met him, Marin let herself believe it. Peace never lasted long in the West, and the hours after Riggs' fall proved it. Though Jonah returned alive, the fight had stirred dust that refused to settle. By dawn, word spread through every ranch and homestead: Riggs was dead, and someone else would come to claim the mess he left. But the worst news rode straight toward Marin. A hard knock rattled the cabin door just after sunrise. Jonah tensed instantly. His gun was still on the table from the night before. He moved quietly toward it. "It's Crowley," a voice called. "Open up, quick." Jonah did, and the sheriff stepped inside with snow clinging to his coat. His expression was grim. "Riggs had a brother," Crowley said. "Orrin Riggs. Not as cunning, but mean. And he's headed this way with a few men who owe him blood favor." Marin's stomach dropped. "Here." "Why here?" "Because they think Jonah killed their blood, and that you're the reason." Jonah set his jaw. "I'll face them." Crowley shook his head. "No time. Orrin's a fool, but he's dangerous. I want you two out of sight until my men arrive." Jonah stepped protectively closer to Marin. "We're not running, Dot." Crowley leveled him with a look. "This ain't running. This is staying alive." Before either could argue, another voice echoed from outside, rough, angry, already too close. "Jonah McCoy. Get out here." Marin's breath froze. Jonah grabbed her shoulders. "Down the back. Now." But Marin didn't move, couldn't move. Fear held her pinned. Crowley whispered fiercely, "Go." "I'll stall, M." Jonah's hand closed around hers, warm, steady, pulling her toward the back door. This time, she followed. They slipped out into the morning cold, snow crunching underfoot. Jonah led her behind the barn, then toward the narrow gully that fed into the woods. But before they reached it, a gunshot cracked through the air. Marin gasped and ducked. Jonah shoved her behind a stack of split logs, shielding her with his body. Voices shouted. Men cursed. Footsteps pounded closer along the property line. "Stay down," Jonah whispered. But he wasn't staying down. Before she could grab him, he rose, gun in hand, ready to draw fire away from her. "Jonah, don't," she whispered. He looked back at her, just once. "I promised you'd be safe." Then he sprinted for the barn, drawing men after him like a torch in the dark. Marin pressed a hand to her mouth, heart pounding. She heard gunfire, 2 shots, then another. Jonah is shouting orders at Crowley. Boots crunching hard over ice. She couldn't stay hidden. She wouldn't. Pulling in a breath sharp enough to burn, Marin ran low along the fence line toward the barn. Smoke drifted from bullet-scarred boards. She peeked around the edge, and saw Jonah facing two men alone while a third tried to flank him. "Jonah!" she cried. He turned just in time to see the third man raise his gun. Marin didn't think. She moved. Her hand closed around the nearest object, an iron branding tool left beside a trough, and she hurled it with every ounce of strength still in her. It slammed into the attacker's wrist. His shot was fired wildly. Jonah didn't hesitate. He turned, fired, and the man fell. But the other two charged. Jonah fought one, hand to hand, grappling in the snow, boots sliding. The second swung a rifle like a club. Marin didn't have a weapon, but she had courage born from fear and fury. She grabbed a wooden bucket, smashed it into the attacker's back, giving Jonah the opening he needed. Jonah drove his elbow into the man's jaw, spun, and fired at the last one standing. Silence slammed down. Snowflakes drifted in through broken boards. Jonah stood bent over, catching his breath, coat torn, knuckles bleeding. Marin rushed to him. "Jonah, are you hurt? Tell me." He caught her hands. "I'm all right." "You," his voice broke with something raw. "You shouldn't have come out. I couldn't stay hidden while you fought for me." Marin's hands trembled as they cupped his face. "I won't ever hide behind silence again." Before he could answer, Crowley and his men burst onto the property, taking over the scene and securing the captured gunman. Crowley looked at them, Marin pressed tightly against Jonah, Jonah holding her as if he'd lose her if he loosened his grip even a fraction. "It's done," the sheriff said quietly. But Jonah knew better. He looked at Marin, her hair wild, her courage brighter than anything in the broken barn. "It's not done," he whispered. "Not till you're free. Truly free." Marin swallowed. "Then let's finish it. Together." Jonah pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "Together," he vowed. And somewhere deep inside her, a long-locked door finally broke open. The sun sank low behind the ridges, painting the snow-covered hills in gold and rose. The wind no longer howled, it whispered, gentle and forgiving. Jonah and Marin stood on the porch of the cabin, the battle behind them and a quiet victory in front. For the first time in weeks, the world felt still, like it was catching its breath. Marin's hands were tucked into Jonah's coat, warm despite the lingering chill. The weight of fear, of threats, of past mistakes, finally seemed to lift from her shoulders. She let herself relax, just a little, just enough to breathe in the freedom she had almost lost. Jonah's eyes were steady, dark, and unwavering as they searched her face. "You're safe now," he said. "No one's coming for you, not Riggs, not his kin, not anyone who thinks they can touch you." "I know," Marin whispered. "I never realized how much I needed that, until now." She looked down, then back up at him. "And I never realized how much I trusted you. Not just to protect me, but to stand with me." Jonah smiled, a slow curve of relief and certainty. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. We fight together. Always." Marin's lips curved, a tentative smile that grew stronger with each heartbeat. "Together," she echoed. They stepped closer, the cold brushing past them, but the warmth between them was thicker than any fire. Jonah reached up, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. His thumb traced the line of her cheek, soft, careful, reverent. "You warned me once," he said, voice low, "don't touch my heart." Marin's eyes flicked down, heart hammering, remembering. "I meant it," she said, though her voice held less conviction now. Jonah's lips curved with that easy, impossible grin she knew too well. "Too late," he said, repeating words that had once shattered and healed all at once. She laughed softly, a sound of relief and joy she didn't know she could make. "Too late," she whispered back, letting herself lean into him. He took her hands in his, strong, protective, yet gentle. "We've fought enough for today. Tomorrow is ours." Maren felt tears prick her eyes, not of sorrow, but of release. The danger, the fear, the doubts, they were gone. And in their place, something new, something rare and precious, bloomed. Jonah pulled her close, and she rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the snow, turning the world into a canvas of gold and white. The cabin, the fields, the distant hills, they all felt like home now. And for Maren, home had never been a place, it had always been a person. "Jonah," she said, lifting her face to meet his, "I was so afraid of letting anyone in. I thought freedom meant keeping my heart locked up. But you," her voice broke with emotion. "You taught me something different. That love isn't weakness. It's strength. And it's worth fighting for." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I won't ever take that from you. Not now, not ever." They stood together in the quiet evening, hands clasped, hearts tethered, knowing the battles behind them had forged something stronger than fear. Ash Hollow might remain a rugged place, full of dust, wind, and unyielding land, but within that harshness, they had found each other. As darkness crept across the valley, Maren stepped back slightly, brushing the snow from her coat. She looked into Jonah's eyes one last time, the warmth of his gaze melting the last of her hesitation. "Now," she said, smiling, "let's see what comes next. Together." Jonah grinned. "Together," he confirmed. They turned toward the cabin, arms brushing, heart steady, footsteps echoing softly in the snow. Behind them, the land stretched wide and open, full of promise. And ahead of them lay a life they would shape themselves, free from fear, free from threats, and free to love without reservation. As the last light faded, Jonah and Maren crossed the threshold of the cabin, side by side, leaving behind every shadow, every danger, every doubt. The fire in the hearth crackled, and in its warmth, they found their beginning. And for the first time in a long while, everything felt exactly right. If you enjoyed this Wild West story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another tale of love, courage, and adventure on the frontier.